Late in the spring of 2011, a group of hikers discovered the wreckage of a small aircraft in the mountains north of Telluride, Colorado. The subsequent investigation by federal agencies uncovered several oddities regarding both the aircraft and its sole deceased occupant. Both the aircraft and its pilot proved to be impossible to identify by those tasked with doing so. The descriptive information on the data plate affixed to the tail section of the wreckage listed the manufacturer to be Junkers, the model number to be GT91, and the year of manufacture as 1984. This is peculiar because Junkers is a defunct German aircraft manufacturer, who never produced a model GT91, and stopped producing aircraft in 1969. After all attempts at identifying the airframe wreckage were unsuccessful, the investigators turned their attention to the corpse. An attempt to identify the remains of the pilot led the NTSB to the doorstep of Mr. Richard Blackburn, a charter pilot and flight instructor. His fingerprints, and those of the corpse in Colorado, were found to be identical, by no less than 3 independent examiners. Left with the wreckage of an aircraft that was never produced, and the corpse of a pilot who was still very much alive, investigators then turned their attention to the few items that had not been destroyed by the crash or the ensuing fire. Namely the contents of a black military-style backpack, and a series of journals numbered 01 to 03. The first in the series, a blue notebook, contained illustrations, some crude and some very detailed, of nightmarish figures interspersed with technical illustrations for unidentified machines. Between its spiral-bound pages were clippings from unknown publications referencing events which did not occur in places which do not exist. The second notebook, red in color, contained a first-person handwritten account of fantastic experiences. Were it not for the additional items recovered, it could have easily been dismissed as a work of fiction. However, taken as a whole, it was either an extremely elaborate hoax, or something else. The investigation created more questions with every turn, and as the incongruities and enigmas began piling up, the lead investigator for the NTSB began receiving pressure to close the case. Adam Harris, a seasoned veteran in his field, remained steadfast in his commitment to a proper inquiry, even as his duress mounted. This pressure culminated with the disappearance of his dog, and subsequent reappearance of his pet, without his legs. Following the maiming of his animal, Mr. Harris apparently buckled under the strain, and announced the results of his investigation. Described by others close to the investigation as a hastily crafted and poorly written narrative, it involved supposition about a drug mule and an altered airframe. 2 days later, Mr. Harris received a phone call, interrupting the dinner he and his wife were having. He calmly got up, announced to his spouse that he had to sign some paperwork at the office, and walked out his front door. This was the last time anyone has seen or heard from him. While the vanishing of Mr. Harris has enough intrigue to fill a spy novel, the purpose of this document is not to shed light on the circumstances of his disappearance. Rather, the purpose is to execute a contract. Mr. Harris, being fearful for his life, and believing that the information he was gathering from his investigation was the cause of this danger, made photocopies of his notes and pictures regarding the unidentified wreckage and pilot. These documents were left in the possession of Roland Bluff, Esquire. Mr. Harris and Mr. Bluff reached an agreement by which the bulk of his investigative findings would be released to the public should any of the following occur: 1. Mr. Harris go missing for a period of 30 days, 2. Be killed, or 3. Commit suicide. As Mr. Harris has been unaccounted for since he abruptly left his home, a period of greater than 30 days, Mr. Bluff has had notebook number 2 transcribed and printed, thus fulfilling the first of 3 obligations to his client. In accordance with this agreement, anyone in possession of the numerical sequence which appears on the last page of notebook number 2, but which is omitted in this printing, may claim his or her possessions by contacting Adam Bluff, Esquire by mail at the address listed below. Adam Bluff, CO. Armadine Research Corporation. P.O. Box 112,314,283. Denver, Colorado 80120. USA. When writing, please provide him with the correct numerical sequence, and a preferred contact method.